When my husband Marcus received that ultrasound photo from his secretary Sophia showing their unborn child, I didn't scream or throw things like I did in my previous life. Instead, I smiled and congratulated them both. What Marcus didn't know was that I had already lived through this nightmare once before, and this time I was going to let him have exactly what he thought he wanted. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Marcus walked into our kitchen, his phone buzzing with what I already knew would be the message that changed everything. In my previous life, I had snatched that phone from his hands, seen Sophia's excited text about their baby, and completely lost my mind. This time, I calmly poured his coffee and watched his face change as he read the message. The guilt, the panic, the desperate attempt to hide his screen from me. It was all exactly as I remembered. "Everything okay, honey?" I asked, sweetly, setting his favorite mug in front of him. Marcus nearly dropped his phone. "Oh, yeah, just work stuff. You know how demanding the law firm can be." I nodded sympathetically. Marcus Wellington had always been ambitious, climbing his way up from junior associate to senior partner at Henderson, Miles and Associates. What he didn't know was that his ambition would be his downfall. 3 years ago, in my previous life, this exact scene had played out differently. I was Victoria Chen Wellington then, the devoted wife who had given up her promising career in marketing to support Marcus's legal aspirations. When I discovered his affair with his secretary Sophia Barnes and her pregnancy, I had fought tooth and nail to save our marriage. I begged, I pleaded, I threatened to expose him to his partners. I made scene after scene, each one more desperate than the last. Marcus grew to despise me for it. He called me clingy, manipulative, pathetic. The pregnancy gave him the perfect excuse to leave me for Sophia, claiming he needed to do the right thing for his child. But the universe had given me a second chance. I woke up 3 months ago, back in our penthouse apartment in downtown Chicago, with full knowledge of what was to come. This time I would play the game differently. Over the next few days, I watched Marcus struggle with his secret. He became jumpy, constantly checking his phone, making excuses to work late. In my previous life, I had hired a private investigator and confronted him with evidence. The explosion that followed had been spectacular and utterly pointless. This time, I played the perfect wife. I packed his lunches with little love notes, surprised him with his favorite takeout from Romano's Italian bistro, and never once questioned his increasingly obvious lies about overtime cases. 2 weeks later, Marcus finally worked up the courage to tell me. I was in our marble-tiled bathroom, applying my nighttime skincare routine, when he appeared in the doorway looking like a man heading to his execution. "Victoria, we need to talk." I turned to face him, my expression warm and welcoming. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" He sat heavily on the edge of our king-sized bed, running his hands through his dark hair. "There's something I need to tell you, and you're not going to like it." I walked over and sat beside him, taking his trembling hand in mine. "Marcus, whatever it is, we can work through it together. We always do." The irony wasn't lost on me. In my previous life, these exact words had been genuine. Now they were calculated, each syllable designed to give him exactly what he thought he wanted. "I've been having an affair," he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "With Sophia. She's pregnant. It's mine." I let the silence stretch between us, watching his face cycle through anticipation, fear and something that looked almost like disappointment, when I didn't immediately explode. Finally I squeezed his hand and smiled sadly. "I know." His eyes widened. "You know. How long have you known?" "A few weeks." I could see the signs. I stood up and walked to our window, gazing out at the Chicago skyline. "I've been trying to figure out how to bring it up without making you feel cornered." Marcus stared at me like I had grown a second head. In my previous life, his confession had triggered a 3-hour screaming match that ended with him storming out and not coming home for 2 days. "You're not angry?" he asked, his voice small and confused. I turned back to him, and for a moment, I let genuine emotion show on my face, not the rage and betrayal he expected, but a deep, weary sadness. I'm hurt, Marcus. Devastated. Actually. But I'm not angry. You didn't plan for this to happen, and now you're in an impossible situation. I sat back down beside him. A baby changes everything. His relief was palpable, but underneath it, I caught something else. Something that looked almost like disappointment. It was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. So what happens now? He asked. I took a deep breath, as if gathering courage for what I was about to say. I think you should be with Sophia. The baby needs both parents, and you clearly have feelings for her that you don't have for me anymore. Marcus jerked back like I had slapped him. Victoria, that's not, I mean, yes, I care about Sophia, but, Marcus, I interrupted gently. It's okay, I can see how you look at her. I've seen the way you light up when you talk about work lately. I'm not blind to the fact that you've been pulling away from me for months. This was true. Even before Sophia's pregnancy, Marcus had grown distant. In my previous life, I had attributed it to work stress. Now I understood it had been guilt and the intoxication of new love. I want you to be happy, I continued, meaning every word in a way he would never understand. If Sophia and the baby make you happy, then that's what you should choose. For the next hour, we talked about logistics with the calm rationality of business partners dissolving a company. I suggested he move in with Sophia gradually, so as not to shock their families too much. I offered to handle telling our friends that we were separating amicably due to growing apart. I even suggested we use separate lawyers to keep things simple. Marcus agreed to everything, but his confusion only seemed to deepen. This wasn't the script he had prepared for. Men like Marcus, I had learned, needed conflict to justify their choices. Without my tears and accusations, he was forced to confront the reality that he was simply a man who had chosen temporary passion over lasting commitment. Over the following weeks, I maintained my supportive facade as Marcus moved his belongings to Sophia's modest apartment in Lincoln Park. I helped him pack, made sure he took the good coffee maker, and even gave him a housewarming gift for their new life together. Sophia, for her part, seemed genuinely bewildered by my gracious behavior. When Marcus brought her by to collect the last of his things, she pulled me aside. Victoria, I need you to know that I never meant for this to happen. Marcus and we just found each other. I finished for her with a warm smile. These things happen, Sophia. I don't blame you for falling in love. She was young, 26 to my 34, with glossy auburn hair and the kind of eager optimism that made her believe love conquered all. In my previous life, I had hated her with every fiber of my being. Now I almost felt sorry for her. You're being so understanding about this, she said, tears gathering in her green eyes. I don't know how you do it. I want Marcus to be happy, I repeated, the lie flowing easily now. And I can see that you make him happy in a way I couldn't. What I didn't tell her was that I knew exactly how this fairy tale would end. Marcus Wellington was a man who wanted what he couldn't have, and lost interest in what came too easily. In my previous life, he had fought me for 2 years before finally winning his freedom. The struggle had made Sophia seem like a prize worth any sacrifice. This time, I was handing her to him on a silver platter, and I knew from experience that Marcus had never appreciated anything that didn't cost him dearly. As I watched them drive away that evening, Marcus's BMW loaded with the last of his possessions, I felt a sense of satisfaction I hadn't experienced in either lifetime. The game was just beginning, and this time, I held all the cards. In my previous life, the divorce had taken 18 months, and cost me everything. Marcus had painted me as the bitter, vindictive ex-wife who couldn't accept his happiness. His partners at the firm had sided with him, our mutual friends had chosen him, and I had been left with nothing but a settlement that barely covered a modest apartment. This time would be different. This time I would give Marcus Wellington exactly what he thought he wanted, and watch as it slowly destroyed him. The pregnancy was progressing beautifully, according to the social media posts. Sophia couldn't seem to stop sharing gender reveal parties, baby shower registrations, nursery decorating photos. She documented every moment of their blissful new life. Marcus played the devoted father-to-be perfectly, his LinkedIn profile updated with a new photo of him and Sophia at Navy Pier, her growing belly prominently displayed. But I knew Marcus better than anyone, and I was beginning to see the crack. The first crack appeared 3 months after Marcus moved in with Sophia. I was having lunch at the signature room with my college friend Rachel when I spotted them at a corner table. What caught my attention wasn't their presence. Chicago's business district was small enough that running into ex-spouses was inevitable, but Marcus's body language. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. He sat rigid, his jaw clenched as Sophia animatedly discussed something while pointing at baby magazines spread across their table. When she reached over to touch his hand, he pulled back slightly, checking his watch with the kind of impatience I recognized from our marriage's final months. In my previous life, they had been inseparable during the pregnancy. Marcus had doted on Sophia, attending every doctor's appointment, assembling cribs at midnight, and posting proud father-to-be updates on social media. This Marcus looked like a man trapped in a conversation he desperately wanted to escape. I excused myself from Rachel and approached their table with the warm smile I had perfected over the past months. Marcus, Sophia, what a lovely surprise. Marcus, startled, nearly knocking over his water glass. Victoria, hi. We were just planning the nursery, Sophia finished, beaming as she rubbed her now prominent belly. Look at these adorable themes we found. She thrust a magazine toward me, pages marked with colorful sticky notes. I studied the marked pages with genuine interest. Oh, the woodland theme is absolutely precious. Very sophisticated choice. I turned to Marcus. You must be so excited to start decorating. His smile looked like it had been painted on with a shaking hand. Yeah, it's great. Sophia's enthusiasm faltered slightly at his lukewarm response. Marcus has been so busy with the Morrison case. You know how demanding corporate litigation can be. I nodded sympathetically. The Morrison case, a complex merger dispute that had consumed Marcus's attention for months in my previous life. But back then he had still made time for Sophia, often working from her apartment just to be near her. Well, I won't keep you from your planning, I said, squeezing Sophia's shoulder gently. Take care of yourself, especially in this heat. Pregnancy and summer can be rough. As I walked away, I caught Marcus's reflection in the restaurant's mirrored wall. He was watching me leave with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between confusion and longing. The second crack appeared 2 weeks later through an unexpected source, Marcus's mother, Patricia Wellington. Patricia had never liked me. During our marriage, she made no secret of her belief that her precious son had married beneath his social station. A marketing professional from a middle-class family wasn't the kind of wife she had envisioned for her Harvard Law graduate son. When Marcus left me for Sophia, Patricia had been quietly thrilled. Sophia, with her deference and obvious admiration for the Wellington family name, was much more to her liking. At least, that's what I assumed until she called me on a Thursday evening. Victoria, dear, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I nearly dropped my wine glass. Patricia had never called me dear in the 5 years I'd known her. Of course not, Patricia. How are you? I'm well, thank you. I was wondering if you might have time for lunch this weekend. There are some things I'd like to discuss with you. We met at the Union League Club, Patricia's preferred venue for important conversations. She looked impeccable as always. Silver hair, perfectly styled, wearing a navy Chanel suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. You're looking well, Victoria, she said, studying me over her reading glasses. Remarkably well considering everything you've been through. Thank you. I've been focusing on moving forward positively. Patricia nodded approvingly. That's exactly what I wanted to discuss. Your handling of this entire situation has been unexpected. I waited, sensing she had more to say. Marcus's father and I raised him to honor his commitments, she continued carefully. When he told us about the affair and the pregnancy, We were naturally disappointed in his choices. This was news to me. In my previous life, the Wellingtons had publicly supported Marcus's decision to leave me for Sophia. However, Patricia continued, your gracious response to an impossible situation has shown a character that we perhaps didn't fully appreciate before. I felt a flicker of genuine surprise. I appreciate you saying that, Patricia. The truth is, Victoria, I'm concerned about Marcus. He seems unsettled, restless. Even with the baby coming, he doesn't seem truly happy. I chose my words carefully. New parenthood can be overwhelming. The reality is often different from the anticipation. Patricia leaned forward slightly. Has he reached out to you at all? Called or visited? The question hung in the air between us. The answer was yes. Marcus had been calling me with increasing frequency over the past month. Ostensibly, the calls were about practical matters, forwarding mail, questions about our joint accounts, updates on the divorce proceedings, but they always stretched longer than necessary, filled with awkward pauses and careful inquiries about my well-being. We've spoken a few times about practical matters, I said neutrally. Patricia nodded slowly. I see. Well, I wanted you to know that regardless of how things have turned out, you conducted yourself with dignity. That means something to the Wellington family. After lunch, I sat in my car for several minutes, processing the conversation. Patricia Wellington didn't extend olive branches lightly. If she was reaching out to me, it meant Marcus's unhappiness was visible enough to worry his family. The third crack was the most telling, and it came directly from Marcus himself. I was working late at my new job, a senior marketing position at a boutique consulting firm that specialized in crisis management, when my phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen, and I noticed it was nearly 11 p.m. Marcus, is everything okay? Is Sophia all right? She's fine, he said quickly. She's sleeping. I was driving past your building and saw the lights on. Are you working this late? I glanced out my office window at the street below. Sure enough, Marcus's BMW was parked across from the entrance. I had some proposals to finish. What are you doing in this neighborhood so late? I had dinner with a client nearby. The lie came too quickly, too smoothly. Can I come up? Just for a few minutes? Against my better judgment. Or perhaps because of it. I agreed. Marcus appeared at my office door 10 minutes later, looking haggard in a way that expensive suits couldn't hide. He'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. Nice office, he said, glancing around at the sleek furnishings and city view. This firm is lucky to have you. Thank you. How are things with you? How's Sophia feeling? He sank into the chair across from my desk with a heavy sigh. She's good. The baby's due in 6 weeks. Everything's progressing normally. That's wonderful. You must be excited. Marcus stared out the window for a long moment before speaking. Victoria, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you hate me? The question caught me off guard. Though perhaps it shouldn't have. In my previous life, the answer would have been a resounding yes. This time, the truth was more complicated. No, Marcus. I don't hate you. Why not? The question came out almost desperately. I cheated on you. I got another woman pregnant. I left you for her. Any reasonable person would hate me. I leaned back in my chair, studying his face. This was the conversation he had been building toward through all those phone calls, the reason he was driving past my building at 11 p.m. Because hating you would accomplish nothing except making me miserable, I said simply. You made your choice. I accepted it. Life goes on. But don't you feel anything? Anger, betrayal, even disappointment? There was something almost pleading in his voice, as if my anger was something he needed to make sense of his world. I felt all of those things initially, I said, which was true for my previous life. But holding on to them would only hurt me. You're going to be a father, Marcus. You deserve to be happy about that. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Happy? Right. You're not happy about the baby. I am, he said quickly. Of course I am. It's just different than I expected. How so? Marcus ran his hands through his hair. The same gesture he'd made countless times during our marriage when he was struggling with a difficult case. Sophia talks about the baby constantly. Every conversation is about cribs and strollers and pediatricians. She's made lists of lists. She's planned out the first 5 years of this kid's life down to which preschool he'll attend. I waited for him to continue. And everyone expects me to be thrilled about every detail. The type of bottles we register for, the brand of diapers she prefers, whether we should use cloth or disposable. Everything is a major decision that requires my immediate and enthusiastic input. That sounds like normal preparation for new parents. Is it? He looked at me intently. When we talked about having kids, was I supposed to care about all those details? The question revealed more than he probably intended. Marcus and I had discussed children in abstract terms. Someday, when the time was right, when his career was more established, we had never gotten to the point of planning nurseries or researching strollers. Every couple is different, I said, diplomatically. Sophia wants me to take a month off, after the baby's born. A month, Victoria. Do you know what that would do to my caseload? To my standing at the firm? In my previous life, Marcus had taken 3 weeks off and spent most of it working from home anyway. Sophia had complained bitterly about his divided attention. Have you discussed a compromise? Maybe 2 weeks initially with the option to work remotely? I suggested that, she said. I was prioritizing work over our family. He met my eyes. She uses that phrase a lot now. Our family, like it's some sacred entity that trumps everything else. I could hear the resentment building in his voice, the same tone he had used during our worst fights about his long hours and canceled plans. Starting a family is a big adjustment, I offered. Maybe once the baby arrives and you both settle into a routine, things will feel more natural. Marcus nodded absently, but I could see he wasn't convinced. He stayed for another 20 minutes, talking about work and mutual acquaintances, carefully avoiding any mention of Sophia or the baby. When he finally left, he paused at the door. Victoria. Yes? I'm glad you're doing well. Really well. You seem lighter somehow, more yourself than you were before. After he left, I sat in my darkened office, looking out at the Chicago skyline. Marcus was right. I did feel lighter. For the first time in either lifetime, I was free from the desperate need to make him love me, and that freedom was showing him exactly what he had given up. The final crack came in the form of a late-night phone call 3 weeks before Sophia's due date. Victoria. Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. I'm sorry to call so late. I needed to hear a friendly voice. In the background, I could hear muffled sobbing and what sounded like a door slamming. What's wrong? What happened? Sophia and I had a fight. A big one. She's locked herself in the bathroom and won't come out. What was the fight about? The birth plan. He gave a bitter laugh. She wants a completely natural birth, no epidural, no medical interventions, unless absolutely necessary. She's hired a doula and wants to labor at home as long as possible. That doesn't sound unreasonable. It's not the plan itself. It's that she made all these decisions without consulting me. When I asked if we could at least discuss alternatives, she accused me of not respecting her choices about her own body. I could hear the frustration and exhaustion in his voice. She said I was just like every other man who wants to control women's reproductive decisions. Then she started crying and saying I must hate the idea of having a child with her. This was familiar territory. In my previous life, Sophia had been incredibly sensitive during the final weeks of pregnancy, taking every question or suggestion as personal criticism. Pregnancy hormones can make emotions run high, I said gently. She's probably scared about labor and projecting that fear onto you. Maybe. But Victoria, he paused as if weighing whether to continue. I keep thinking about how we used to talk about having kids. Remember, we'd discuss different scenarios, weigh pros and cons, and make decisions together. It was a partnership. The irony was that Marcus and I had never actually reached the point of trying for children. Our discussions had been theoretical, free from the messy reality of pregnancy and impending parenthood. Every couple handles these things differently, I said. Do they? Or did I make a mistake? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with implications neither of us was ready to address directly. Marcus, you're having a baby in 3 weeks. This isn't the time for regrets. I know, you're right, I should go check on Sophia. But he didn't hang up. Instead, there was a long silence broken only by the distant sound of Sophia's muffled cries. Victoria, I'm here. Are you happy? In your new life, I mean. Without. The question was so raw, so vulnerable, that for a moment I felt an echo of the love I had once felt for him. I'm finding my way, I said honestly. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I know who I am outside of being someone's wife. I'm glad, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. You deserve that. After he hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time. In my previous life, Marcus had never called me during fights with Sophia. He had never questioned their compatibility or expressed doubts about their future. My complete capitulation to his affair had robbed him of the narrative he needed, that he was the wronged party fighting for love against impossible odds. Instead, he was discovering what I had known all along, that wanting something and living with it were entirely different things. And with each passing day, the gap between his fantasy of life with Sophia and the reality was growing wider. The real test would come when the baby arrived. In my previous life, the stress of new parenthood had cemented their bond through shared struggle. This time, I suspected it would be the final crack that shattered their foundation completely. I was counting on it. The baby arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning in September, 3 weeks ahead of schedule. I learned about it not from Marcus but from Sophia's Instagram story. A photo of tiny fingers wrapped around her thumb, captioned, "Our miracle has arrived." Mason Alexander, 6 Palbas 2 hours, born at 3:47 a.m. No mention of Marcus in the caption.
No photo of the proud father.
Just Sophia and the baby she had waited 9 months to meet. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant knocked on my office door. "Mrs. Wellington? There's Marcus Wellington here to see you. He says it's urgent." I glanced at the clock, barely noon. If the baby had been born at 3:47 a.m., Marcus had left the hospital less than 8 hours after his son's arrival. He appeared in my doorway looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled. Wrinkled shirt, unshaven jaw, hair sticking up at odd angles. But it was his eyes that told the real story. They held a wild, desperate quality I had never seen before. "Congratulations," I said warmly, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "How are Sophia and the baby doing?" "They're fine." "Perfect. Mason is—" He seemed to struggle for words. "He's beautiful, Victoria. Absolutely perfect. I'm so happy for you both. This must be the most incredible feeling." Marcus sank into the chair, his hands shaking slightly as he ran them through his hair. It should be the best day of my life." I waited, sensing he needed to work up to whatever had driven him here. "The birth didn't go according to Sophia's plan," he began slowly. "She wanted that natural home birth experience. But Mason came early, and there were complications. We had to do an emergency C-section. That must have been terrifying for both of you." It was. But the moment I held him, Victoria, God, the moment I held my son, I should have felt complete, overwhelmed with joy. Ready to take on the world for this tiny person. His voice broke slightly on the last words. Instead, all I could think about was you. The admission hung between us like a physical presence. I kept my expression carefully neutral, though my heart rate had spiked. "Marcus, I know how that sounds," he continued desperately. "I know it's insane and selfish and wrong, but standing there in that delivery room, holding my newborn son, the only person I wanted to share that moment with was you." He leaned forward, his eyes intense and pleading. "Do you remember when we used to talk about having children? How we'd joke about whether they'd have your stubbornness or my terrible sense of direction. How we'd argue about names and then end up laughing because we both secretly loved the same ones. I did remember, though, those conversations had been brief and theoretical. In my previous life, I had treasured them as proof that Marcus saw a future with me. Now I understood they had been nothing more than idle fantasies. Those were lovely conversations, I said carefully. When Mason was born, when the doctor placed him in my arms, I found myself thinking about those names we discussed. About how you would have cried with joy, how you would have known exactly what to do. Sophia was exhausted from the surgery and the medications, and I was standing there holding our son, feeling more alone than I've ever felt in my life. New parenthood is overwhelming. It's not that, Marcus interrupted. It's not about being overwhelmed or scared. It's about realizing I made the biggest mistake of my life. There it was. The moment I had been orchestrating for months, delivered with a desperation that surpassed even my expectations. You have a beautiful family now, I said gently. A son who needs his father. I don't love her. The words came out flat, definitive, like a judge pronouncing a verdict. I thought I did. I convinced myself I did. But standing in that hospital room, I realized I never loved Sophia. I was in love with the idea of her, the excitement, the newness, the way she made me feel important and desired. But that's not love, is it? I remained silent, letting him continue his confession. Love is what we had. Victoria. The way you knew exactly how I liked my coffee in the morning. How you'd let me vent about difficult cases without trying to fix everything. The way you'd curl up next to me when I was stressed, not saying anything, just being there. His voice grew more passionate, more desperate. Love is how you handled this whole situation. Any other woman would have destroyed me, told my partners about the affair, made me fight for every penny in the divorce, turned our friends against me. But you were graceful, dignified. You let me go because you thought it would make me happy. You made your choice, Marcus. You chose your family. I chose wrong. The words exploded out of him. I chose excitement over substance. I chose someone who makes me feel guilty for working late over someone who understood that work was part of who I am. I chose someone who wants to plan every moment of our child's life over someone who would have been a true partner in raising him. He stood up and began pacing, his agitation growing with each word. Do you know what Sophia said when I suggested we name him after my grandfather? She said she'd already decided on Mason and that we weren't changing it now. Not what do you think about Mason, or how do you feel about that name? Just a flat declaration that the decision was made. I watched him unravel, each word revealing the depth of his regret. And the nursery, she decorated it entirely without my input. When I came home from work yesterday, she'd already assembled the crib, hung the pictures, arranged everything exactly how she wanted it. When I mentioned that I might have liked to help, she said I'd been too busy to be involved anyway. She was nesting. Pregnant women often want to control their environment. It's not about control, Victoria. It's about partnership. You would have waited for me. You would have made it something we did together, even if it meant working around my schedule. The irony was staggering. Marcus was crediting me with patience and understanding I had never actually demonstrated. In our marriage, I had been just as guilty of making unilateral decisions, of prioritizing my preferences over collaboration. But his selective memory was rewriting our history to support his current narrative. You're romanticizing our marriage, I said quietly. We had our problems too. Did we? He stopped pacing and looked at me intently. Or did I just think we did because I was comparing you to some fantasy version of love I thought I deserved? His phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it, and his face tightened. Sophia wants to know when I'm coming back. She says Mason needs his father. He laughed bitterly. 24 hours of fatherhood, and she's already using him as leverage. She just gave birth, Marcus. She's probably scared and wants your support. You're defending her. Even now you're defending the woman who broke up our marriage. I'm not defending anyone. I'm just trying to help you see clearly. I am seeing clearly. For the first time in months, I'm seeing everything clearly. He moved closer to my desk, his eyes bright with desperate hope. Victoria, I want to come home. The words I had been waiting to hear, delivered exactly as I had predicted. But hearing them brought no satisfaction, only a hollow sense of completion. Marcus, you have a newborn son. I'll take care of Mason. I'll be the best father I can be. But I don't have to be with Sophia to do that. Plenty of divorced parents co-parent successfully. You're not thinking rationally. You're exhausted and emotional. I've never thought more clearly in my life. He leaned across the desk, his voice urgent. I know I have no right to ask this. I know I destroyed everything we built together. But is there any chance, any possibility that you might consider giving us another try? This was the moment. The culmination of months of careful planning, strategic kindness, and calculated patience. Marcus Wellington, the man who had left me for another woman, was begging for a second chance while his son lay sleeping in a hospital nursery. In my previous life, I would have said yes immediately. I would have fallen into his arms, grateful for any crumb of affection he offered. I would have convinced myself that his regret was proof of real love, that this time would be different. But I wasn't the same woman who had begged and pleaded for his attention. I had spent months rediscovering who I was without him, building a life that didn't revolve around his approval or presence. And more importantly, I had seen this exact scenario play out before. No, I said simply. Marcus recoiled as if I had slapped him. No? Just, no? You left me for another woman who was carrying your child. That woman just gave birth to your son a few hours ago. And instead of being with them, you're here trying to undo a decision you made months ago. I made a mistake. You made a choice, I corrected firmly. A deliberate, calculated choice to pursue an affair and leave our marriage. The fact that you're having second thoughts doesn't erase that choice or its consequences. But I love you, he said desperately. I know that now. I love you, Victoria. You love the idea of me. Just like you love the idea of Sophia. You fall in love with fantasies, Marcus, not reality. I stood up and walked around the desk, maintaining professional distance as I spoke. In your fantasy version of our marriage, I was the perfect understanding wife who never complained about your long hours or canceled plans. In your fantasy of life with Sophia, she was the passionate young woman who would worship you and never make demands. Now you're fantasizing about coming back to me, convinced I'm the answer to your problems. That's not. It is exactly that. You don't love me, Marcus. You love the version of me you've created in your head, the one who's been gracious about this entire situation, who's shown you what you lost. But that woman is as much a fantasy as perfect wife Victoria or adoring girlfriend Sophia. His face had gone pale, but I continued. The real me has spent the last 6 months building a new life. I have a career I'm passionate about, friends who value me, and most importantly, I've learned to be happy without you. The real me doesn't want to go backward. I could change, he said weakly. I could be better. You could, but not for me. If you want to change, do it for Mason. Do it for yourself. Do it because you want to be a better man, not because you want to win back something you lost. Marcus slumped back into the chair, the fight going out of him. So what am I supposed to do? Go back to Sophia and pretend to be happy? You're supposed to figure out how to be the father your son deserves. Whether that's with Sophia or not is between you and her. But it has nothing to do with me. I don't know how to be happy without you, he whispered. Then learned the same way I did. We sat in silence for several minutes. Outside my office window, the rain had stopped and weak afternoon sunlight was trying to break through the clouds. What happens now? Marcus asked finally. Now you go back to the hospital. You hold your son, you figure out what kind of father you want to be and what kind of life you want to build for him. And us. There is no us, Marcus. There hasn't been for months. He nodded slowly, accepting what he had probably known all along. When he stood to leave, he paused at the door. For what it's worth, I am sorry. For all of it. You deserved better than what I gave you. Yes, I did, but I found better. And someday, you will too. After he left, I returned to my quarterly reports. But the numbers blurred together on the page. I had achieved everything I set out to accomplish. Marcus was miserable, full of regret, desperate to undo the choices that had destroyed our marriage. Sophia was alone with a newborn, realizing that the man she had won was already trying to escape. But instead of satisfaction, I felt empty. Hollow. The revenge I had planned so carefully had succeeded beyond my wildest expectations, yet it brought none of the peace I had anticipated. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I found a photo of a sleeping baby with tiny perfect features and Marcus's distinctive dark hair. Below the photo was a message from Sophia. I know things between us have been complicated, but I wanted you to see Mason. He's beautiful. And despite everything, I thought you should know that part of Marcus will always be in the world. I hope someday we can find a way to be civil for his sake. I stared at the photo for a long time. This innocent child would grow up with a father who already resented his existence, and a mother who would soon discover that winning someone else's husband came with its own set of consequences. In my previous life, I had spent years consumed with hatred for this baby, seeing him as a symbol of everything I had lost. Now, looking at his peaceful sleeping face, I felt only sadness for the complicated life he had been born into. 3 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Marcus had moved out of Sophia's apartment. The official story was that they were taking some time to figure things out and focusing on co-parenting. The reality, according to my sources, was that Marcus was sleeping on his brother's couch and Sophia was barely speaking to him. He called me once during that period, late on a Friday night, clearly drunk. You were right, he slurred into the phone. About everything. I fall in love with fantasies. How's Mason? I asked, steering the conversation away from us. He's perfect. Absolutely perfect. And I'm a terrible father. Why do you say that? Because every time I look at him, I think about how much I've screwed up his life before it even really began. You can still fix that. Can you really come back from destroying everything that mattered? I did, I said simply, and hung up. A year later, I received a wedding invitation in elegant script. My name was written in calligraphy on cream-colored paper, inviting me to celebrate the marriage of Dr. James Mitchell and Victoria Chen. James was a trauma surgeon I had met through my crisis management work, brilliant, kind, and refreshingly straightforward about his intentions and feelings. When he said he loved me, he meant the real me, not some idealized version. When he proposed, it was because he wanted to build a life with me, not because he was running from something else. I thought about sending Marcus an announcement, then decided against it. My new life wasn't about him anymore. On my wedding day, as James and I exchanged vows in a small ceremony surrounded by people who truly cared about us, I caught sight of a familiar figure in the back of the church. Marcus stood alone, barely recognizable in an ill-fitting suit, his face gaunt and aged beyond his years. He had managed to track down my wedding details, had shown up uninvited to watch me promise my life to another man. After the ceremony, he approached me while James was talking to his family. You look beautiful, he said simply. Happy? Thank you. I won't bother you again after today. I just wanted to see. I needed to know that you found what you deserved. How's Mason? I asked. Marcus's face softened for the first time. He's incredible, walking now, saying a few words. He calls me Dada, and it's the best thing in my life. And Sophia, we're working it out. Slowly. We'll never be together again. But we're learning to be good parents to him. That's what matters. I'm glad. He nodded and turned to go, then stopped. Victoria, in another life, do you think we could have been happy? I looked at him, really looked, and saw the man I had once loved, desperately, now broken and searching for meaning in hypotheticals. In another life, Marcus, you might have been someone who could love without losing yourself, and I might have been someone who didn't need to be chosen to know my worth. Yeah, he said softly, maybe we would have been. He walked away then, disappearing into the Chicago evening, and I knew I would never see him again. As James and I drove away from the church toward our honeymoon, he took my hand and squeezed it gently. "Any regrets?" he asked. I thought about Marcus's desperate phone calls, Sophia's struggles as a single mother, baby Mason growing up in a broken home. I thought about the revenge I had planned so carefully and executed so perfectly, and how empty it had felt when I finally achieved it. "None," I said, and meant it. Because the best revenge, I had learned, wasn't making them pay for what they had taken from me. It was building something so much better that their loss became irrelevant. And as we drove toward our new life together, I finally understood what true victory looked like. It wasn't Marcus begging for forgiveness or Sophia crying over her broken dreams. It was this moment, sitting beside a man who chose me every day. Not because he was running from something else, but because he genuinely wanted to build a life with me. Marcus had given me the greatest gift of all, though he would never know it. He had forced me to discover who I was without him. And that woman, strong, independent, worthy of real love, was someone worth being reborn for. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.